The 3 cities in the USA with the most homeless. The last one is increasing every day. Number 3, Seattle. Seattle has a homeless population exceeding 38,000, which is 5% of the national total, many of whom live unsheltered. The city's tent cities have become infamous, with entire blocks covered in makeshift shelters. What's even crazier, Seattle's homeless crisis costs the city $150 million annually, yet many still live under bridges and in parks across the region. Number 2, Los Angeles. With over 86,000 homeless people, Los Angeles has one of the largest unhoused populations in the U.S. Skid Row, a 50-block neighborhood, is home to thousands of them. The city spends over $1 billion annually on homelessness, yet the crisis continues to grow. Shockingly, some homeless encampments even have their own barbershops and communal kitchen. Number 1, New York City, New York. New York has around 111,500 homeless people. Astoundingly, 1 in 100 NYC residents is homeless, making it the highest in the country. The city shelters 60,000 of them daily, yet subway stations and public parks remain filled with the unsheltered. Despite being a global financial hub, it struggles to house its own people.
It's a scam that's become so normalized that we don't even realize it's a scam anymore.
The American dream. You get up at 5 in the morning, rush to be out of the house at 5:30, try to make it to work at 6. You work a 12-hour shift. In those 12 hours, you take crap from your managers and coworkers. You eat at whatever time they say that you can eat for the amount of time that you can eat. You have sick days, but if you use them, it's frowned upon. So if you want to aspire to be anything within the company, try not to use them. Then you work until you're 62 years old. You pay bills until you die, and you're expected to be grateful. Forgive me, but that it doesn't make any sense. And don't get me wrong, I'm grateful that I can go out to work to provide for my house. In fact, the Bible says that he who does not work should also not eat. So I'm in favor of hard work. What I'm not in favor of, though, is abuse. People putting their jobs in factories before their own health. When they don't need you anymore, you're gone. But if you want to leave, you better put in those 2 weeks. So yeah, it's a scam.
American dream ain't real, never was. It's a bedtime story they tell the poor so we don't wake up and burn the whole system down. Work hard, play by the rules, and you'll make it. Yeah? Then why are millions of us barely scraping by while billionaires hoard enough money to end poverty 100 times over? They tell us it's about effort, that if you're struggling, it's your fault. Not the rigged economy, not the landlords jacking up rent 150% since the 90s, not the fact that minimum wage hasn't kept up with inflation since the 60s, and not the fact that half of us don't have $500 for an emergency while CEOs make that in a second. Nah, it's you. You just didn't try hard enough. I say bullshit. They say go to college, but a degree don't mean nothing when you're drowning in debt you'll never pay off. Student loans in this country total $1.7 trillion. And who profits? The same banks that needed bailouts while we all lost our homes in '08. The same politicians that send their kids to Ivy League schools with no debt, no struggle, and no worries. It was never about giving us a future. It was about trapping us. They say, buy a house. With what? Wages ain't moved in decades. Rent so high, can't even save. The average home price is 5 times what it was in the 80s, and they want to tell us it's just inflation? No, it's greed. It's billionaires and banks buying up homes, turning neighborhoods into playgrounds for the rich, pushing working people into the dirt. They say just get a good job. Where? Factory jobs are all gone. Retail jobs can barely pay rent. Healthcare costs can wipe out your whole life savings overnight. They say the economy is booming. But for who? Because it ain't the single mom working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. It ain't the guy breaking his back in a warehouse with no benefits. And it sure as hell ain't the millions working harder than ever just to stay broke. And then they tell us, well, at least you have freedom. Freedom to what? To die because we can't afford insulin? To work ourselves to death while billionaires ride rockets to space? To choose between rent and food? That ain't freedom. That's a death sentence. The truth is, the American dream is a leash, a scam, a fantasy to keep us obedient, to keep us blaming ourselves instead of the real enemy, the ones who rigged the game in the first place, and they will keep us chasing that lie until the day we die, unless we finally say enough. We don't need to work harder. We don't need to suffer more. We need to take back what's ours. We built this country. We keep it running, and we're the ones struggling? Nah, not anymore. The dream is dead. Time to build something real.
I worked my whole life, and this is what it comes down to? Some greedy person wanting his big chunk out of what little bit I had.
How much longer can you afford to live in your home?
1 month. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Hope that I don't wake up tomorrow. That's crossed my mind.
One of the most important forms of affordable housing is under threat. They're called manufactured housing communities. You might know them as mobile home parks or trailer parks, and they often get a bad rap. But 22 million Americans call them home for a reason.
We're pretty much the last oasis of affordable housing in this country.
These parks are at the foundation of America's housing market, often the last line of defense against homelessness. But over the last decade, these communities have become the target of a new kind of landlord: private equity.
Private equity firms are increasingly getting involved.
Some of the biggest investors in America have moved into this industry.
People living at a local mobile home park outraged over the sharp increase in lot rent.
Rents were raised by nearly 60%.
Their rent could increase by thousands of dollars a year.
A group of mobile home residents are protesting their living conditions.
It's like you genetically bred a superior predator and let him loose in a target-rich environment. This is actually a good day. Sometimes it's like mud.
This corporation is putting profits ahead of the safety and welfare of our local citizens, and this we will not allow.
So why have manufactured homes become private equity's latest target? And what can be done to save one of the last forms of affordable housing in the country?
I've lived in manufactured homes for 50 years, maybe more.
Madeline Beckett lives in a park outside of Lansing, Michigan.
This park was run the way a good park should be run, by the same couple for years and years and years. They were a little stern, or she was a little stern. She was a lot stern, but nobody pulled any punches with her.
Like most people in manufactured housing, Madeline owns her home, but pays monthly rent to the park owner for the land it sits on.
When I retired, I looked at my money and my situation, and I'm like, okay, great. I knew what the rent was. It was 1/3 of my income. I don't live high on the hog. I'm not going to Paris anytime soon. And then the conglomerate came in and offered, apparently, the owner money that he couldn't resist. I looked it up and I went, oh dear, I think we are in trouble.
3 years ago, a private equity firm bought Madeline's community and later sold to another firm. Since then, her monthly rent plus fees have jumped 50%.
Instead of what I thought the rent was going to be, it's $200 more. I have nowhere to go. Just the other day, my daughter went with me to the food bank, and I hadn't done that before. I haven't been poor. I worked for 45 years. There is no American dream anymore. All it is survival.
During the pandemic, institutional investors started to buy more manufactured housing than ever before. Between 2020 and 2021, they made nearly 1/4 of all manufactured home purchases in the U.S. Today, 12 private equity firms own at least 1,200 parks nationwide, according to the Private Equity Stakeholder Project. In Michigan, private equity owns 1 in every 10 parks.
There is an overall trend in our economy to identify who has the fewest choices and then squeeze them.
Paul Terranova organizes manufactured housing residents in Michigan.
While folks often call them mobile homes, they're not really particularly mobile. Wall Street investors, private equity firms, hedge funds kind of figured out that folks living in manufactured housing communities are trapped. They can't move.
It costs $10,000 to $20,000 to move one of these homes, and most people who live in them can't afford that.
If you think about the fact that the average manufactured housing resident lives on about $35,000 a year, that's generally out of people's range.
Because they can't move, they're uniquely vulnerable to predatory landlords who can charge the highest rent residents can bear.
There's a guy named Frank Rolfe who runs something called Manufactured Housing University.
Okay, we're now at her second park. We're getting out again. So here we are.
He was quoted saying something along the lines of, owning a mobile home park is like owning a Waffle House and having your customers chained to the booth.
The big thing is they can really tolerate rent increases really well. And it pretty much works throughout America because there's so much need for affordable housing right now.
That business model, a reliable stream of payments from captive tenants, is a big reason why these parks are so lucrative, providing investors with one of the highest annual returns of any asset in real estate. Higher than offices, commercial, industrial, you name it.
Hey, trailer park.
Brandon. This is a financial play to them. They don't care about us. They'd just as soon evict us, take our homes, and then rent them out to somebody else for $200 more.
Theo Gantos lives in a park near Flint, Michigan. 3 years ago, it was taken over by Homes of America, an affiliate of the hedge fund Alden Global Capital. Alden Global is best known for buying newspapers across the country and stripping their assets.
Yeah, we had a pool, before the Homes of America. We still pay the same amount as though we had a pool and as though we had a community center, but we have no community center either.
Since 2021, Homes of America has gone on a buying spree, spending nearly $300 million to acquire 138 parks across 17 states. They've raised rents and aggressively evicted residents. After years of neglect, only about 15% of the lots in Theo's park are still occupied.
And who is Homes of America?
Homes of America is just a shell within a shell within a shell. Homes of America is Randy Smith.
Randall Smith is the founder and chief investment officer of Alden Global. He lives in Palm Beach, Florida. As of 2017, he owns 17 mansions. He has since sold 14 of them for a reported profit of $57 million.
Yeah, this is the plunder of private equity. This is what they do.
Okay, everybody ready? Everybody rolling? All right, good afternoon.
In August, the county prosecutor brought charges against Homes of America's local LLC for operating the park without a license. It's the first time that the owner of a manufactured housing park in Michigan has ever faced that criminal charge.
A key element in the North Morris Estate's inability to obtain a license is its seeming refusal to fix the park's water problem.
Well, when the water comes out like this, it kind of ruins your whole day.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll get the attention of the out-of-state corporation that owns this park and force its officers and directors to do the right thing for the residents of this community. It's clear to me this corporation is putting profits before people.
Honestly, the warrant should be to Randall Smith, CEO of Alden. But he's hidden himself behind multiple shell layers. So getting to him is hard.
These big companies buying up these communities now need some oversight, because right now they're free to abuse residents in pretty much every way they want.
Holly Hook lives 30 minutes away at another park, owned by private equity firm Haven Park Communities. That's the same company that bought Madeline's Park, and it owns 63 other parks across the country. In the last 6 years, Haven Park has doubled Holly's housing costs. To avoid homelessness, she's had to take on 2 roommates. What power do you have right now in the existing legal structure to do anything about the rising rent or any of the fees?
There's absolutely no recourse right now. About a year after this started, it's like something just broke in me, and I started talking to some neighbors, saying we've got to gather and do something about this.
Residents were up in arms, and they started going to their local township council meetings and their city council meetings, and a few of them were able to make contact with a couple of state representatives, a Democrat named Senator John Cherry.
A lot of people from the district went up to him and told him about what Haven Park was doing, and that's what got him interested in drafting the bill package.
What the legislation tries to do in the broadest sense is to weed out the bad actors in the industry. What we're trying to do is make sure that folks don't get exploited. That's what this is about.
State Senator John Cherry is the sponsor of legislation that would protect residents from the worst abuses of predatory landlords. The bills were drafted in 2021 by a coalition of residents and advocates in direct negotiation with the landlord industry group.
It was a very collaborative process that actually included the Michigan Manufactured Housing Association.
The legislation would require landlords to justify any rent increase above the rate of inflation in front of the state commission. It would also limit the fees that landlords can charge, make utility charges transparent, require notification when a park is sold, and force landlords to pay fair market value for a home if a resident is evicted.
These are really modest protections, so it's not everything that we need right now. It's not going to set the rents back to what they were or anything like that, but it would start to make things more fair. It would just be a modest start.
In the state's last legislative session, the legislation passed the House with overwhelming bipartisan support.
The bill is passed.
But then something changed.
In the early part of 2022, the Michigan Manufactured Housing Association did a 180, pulled their support, and it died in the Michigan State Senate. When we looked at the records, we did see that that coincided with the Michigan Manufactured Housing Association Political Action Committee suddenly getting some very big donations.
Over the course of a year, 2 Haven Park executives gave $358,000 to the industry PAC.
And that's right when the Manufactured Housing Association just totally pulled their support.
That money is some of the people that I know, that's their grocery money. That's their prescription copay. That's the medicine that they're doing without and the food that they're doing without because these people were gouging them.
The most vulnerable residents in Michigan are being taken advantage of. And some people have to choose between rising rent, medications, and food.
In February, Holly, Theo, and other residents went to the state capitol to lobby for a new version of the bill package.
I'm testifying in support of Senate Bills 486 through 490. There's no free market when residents are trapped.
Manufactured housing communities are just one type of property that large investors have targeted in recent years. But these parks are ground zero in a fight that affects all of us. The fight for meaningful control of our neighborhoods and for housing that people from all walks of life can afford.
Everybody deserves drinkable water, and everybody deserves to have affordable housing. We just want a livable place.